Welcome into the Awesemo MMA Strategy Show as we get you ready for UFC 268, which goes down on Saturday night inside Madison Square Garden in New York City. We are sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. We'll talk a little about Monkey Knife Fight later on in the show. We have got a ton of fights to break down. Of course, as always, I am joined by the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Good afternoon, Pete. Great to be here on a Thursday afternoon, talking a little fights with you. And before we kind of start breaking down the fights, as I was looking at the DraftKings salaries, of course, as we do this show here, a Thursday just after 1 o'clock Eastern time, FanDuel salaries are not out yet. My first thought was like, man, there are some interesting underdog plays here this week that are underneath 8,000.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very, very exciting card. I'm excited and looking forward to it. I mean, tons of pivotal matchups for the division, bunch of different divisions. Under 8K is a little bit better than what we've been seeing. And I'm excited to break these fights down and see, how you're feeling on some of these matchups.
Of course, if you do have any questions on the fight, you can leave that in our Discord chat. You can also leave that right here on YouTube as well. We'll get to those questions as we go on throughout the show. Already got some questions in from Discord and Twitter about the fights. We'll talk about those as we do go on. But of course, we have two title fight rematches that are going to headline this card. Let's talk about the first one, Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington. Kamaru Usman, 9,300, 6,900 for Colby Covington. Kind of one of my initial kind of thoughts on this one, Pete, is I think because of the run that Kamaru Usman has been on the last year, I think really plays into the price that we're seeing, not just on DraftKings, but also on the betting odds. We haven't seen Colby Covington in well over a year. The first fight was a very close fight. I mean, you go back to but I think the one thing that really stuck out to me going back and watching the fight was Kamaru Usman was really the first guy that was actually able to slow down the pace of Colby Covington.
Yeah, it was a really, really close fight in the early going. And I was actually surprised by that when I went back and I watched the tape again. I will say that the salary and the betting odds are probably a reflection on Kamaru Usman's rise throughout the pound for pound rankings. And I think deservedly so. He's looked absolutely dominant and like one of the best fighters we've ever seen. I do think that a second time around here against Colby Covington, you could see a more polished, refined Kamaru Usman, especially under Trevor Whitman, under, several camps now. And I think that we could see, a more dominant performance, looking to put a stamp on this sort of, we'll call it, this matchup against Covington, just completely get rid of the possibility of having a third fight. But I was really surprised. It was volume versus effectiveness in the first time. And, you talk about the work rate of Colby Covington constantly being able to chain together takedowns or tons of volume striking. It was mainly just volume striking, no takedowns. I would love to see how this fight would play out if they started to engage in some grappling sequences. Could that zap the energy of either one of these fighters? I'll still lean Kamaru Usman. It's not really much of a lean. I'm actually picking Usman pretty heavy here. I think that he's going to go out there and put a stamp on this fight and get a nice victory at 9,300. The guy's DraftKings gold. Look what he's done. I mean, his floor is so high. 104? That's the worst you're going to get out of a guy at 9,300. There is a win on his record in a 5-round decision over Damian Maia. He scored 80 points, but outside of that, 104 is his second lowest total. Come on. I want him in my lineups.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think there is value on the Colby Covington side of this equation as well. I don't think we can ignore him in this situation. Look, I think this fight is closer than what the salaries are on DraftKings, what the betting lines are. You look at the betting lines, a 3-1 betting favorite pretty much across the board here for Kamaru Usman. Mentioned a couple of questions. One we got over Twitter from @OpenRoadOpenMike said if Colby wins or makes a close split decision loss, do you go with the trilogy right away or wait? Look, I think if Colby wins, they will go right to the trilogy matchup. Sure. If Kamaru Usman wins, I'm just telling you, it wouldn't shock me if Kamaru Usman's next title offense is against Khamzat Chimaev.
I think he'll ride off into the sunset before that happens. He's already kind of just talked about it. I think he's going to do everything he can to avoid Khamzat Chimaev. I think that's one of the guys that needs to be tested a little bit more before he ends up, fighting for the title, because you don't want to fight Kamaru Usman with any questions. Like, you don't want questions surrounding, your toughness or dealing with adversity or your cardio. We haven't seen Khamzat Chimaev tested. Give him one more fight and then get him into a title fight. But yeah, I think that Colby Covington, a lot of people will point to the camp switch here, and MMA Masters thinking that he's going to have a training camp dedicated solely around him, which I think is absolutely beneficial, where you have tons of people just working to make sure that you are at your peak performance. That could be very, very helpful rather than when you're in a big room, such as American Top Team. I'm still thinking that Kamaru Usman is going to go out there in dominant fashion and have answers for everything that Colby Covington throws out there. And I mean, the value is crazy, right? 6,900 for a workhorse is absolutely ridiculous. So there's definitely a path where you could have a losing fighter in the optimal lineup. We'll have to see. But I'm picking Kamaru Usman. If you are siding with Colby Covington, I think taking him via decision is the way to go. That's probably the only bet that I would somewhat hedge the main event. But I think that Kamaru Usman goes out there and gets it done.
Sean mentioned, he says Colby will score over 50 in a decision loss. That would not surprise me. That's why I think when you're playing, especially more in cash games, more than GPP and cash games, I don't mind getting to more Colby Covington if you do expect this fight to go 25 minutes, which I do. Joshua asking, can we talk about Colby Covington's camp switch in regards to this fight? Of course, he's been MMA Masters at one time. And look, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong, but Jorge Masvidal, of course, used to be best buds with Colby Covington, has talked about that. He's got nothing but yes men around him that, at MMA Masters, I have no idea whether that's true or not. Obviously, MMA Masters, as you know, when we talk about South Florida gyms, everyone talks about ATT, everyone talks about, Sanford MMA, but really MMA Masters, it's a quality gym down in South Florida. The thing with Colby Covington is, I mean, look, I think this fight that's going to play on the feet. I just don't know if he can match the striking of Kamaru Usman.
I mean, he was matching it in the first couple rounds. The volume was getting to Kamaru Usman at times, and it looked like he was stinging him. I do think that since that fight, we've seen Kamaru Usman really just develop a better jab, better straight punches, more power in his shots. You saw that in the Masvidal fight. You saw it in the Gilbert Burns fight. I think that the more effective boxing could really be on display here versus the pitter-patter type of Colby Covington trying to win rounds. Now, I like Colby Covington. I think he's a fantastic fighter. I just think that Usman's constantly leveling up, and Colby Covington's going to be a nightmare for everybody else in this division. I just think that Usman has his number. I think that, having a smaller camp is not a problem. And a lot of people think you have to go to these mega camps. Mega camps are great because you're in a room surrounded by top talented fighters that can test you in all areas. That is fantastic. You need that. You need those challenging rounds. But to have a small stable of coaches that care only about you is extremely beneficial. So let's not overlook that.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to Justin Gaethje kind of talk about with their room over there in Denver with Trevor Whitman, where they said literally, there'd be one training session, that would be Kamaru Usman's training session, and then Rose would come in, and then Gaethje would come in, and Gaethje talked about it. He says, you know what, you come in for your session, you get there early, you're watching that other fighter and you're seeing what they're doing in that room. So there's pros and minuses to both of those situations as well. Of course, this is the also MMA strategy show. Of course, if you're listening to us on YouTube, always do appreciate you give us that thumbs up. You got to subscribe to the channel. You got to do that. Of course, coming up after us will be the NHL strategy show. And if you're not a member of Also Plus and you want to get a little peek what's behind the paywall, today's free premium data and tools are Thursday Night Football Showdown single game rankings, NHL top stacks, and NBA player projections, of course, plus Adam's NBA deeper dive article, which is free every day. It's an article that I go to each and every day. And also, you got to check out those topics we have over, those articles we have over at Odd Shopper if you're looking to play some prop contest, if you're in a state that you can play those prop contests at. So, as always, appreciate everyone tuning in here. Of course, co-main event will be another rematch. Rose Namajunas taking on Weili Zhang. 8,200 for Rose, for Weili 8,000. Pete, I don't think there's a ton that we can take out of the first matchup because it was only 78 seconds. One of the more interesting thoughts heading into this rematch is the fact of Weili did move her training to Fight Ready in Arizona. For people who are not familiar with Fight Ready, that is the gym that has been the home of Henry Cejudo. I actually believe Cejudo actually has ownership in the gym. Striking coach there is Eddie Shaw. Santandino is the head coach there. It's a great team there. I don't know how well it fits into what Weili does because I don't think she's going to go for a takedown on this one, Pete. I think this is a fight that's going to play on the feet. I think this thing's going to last 25 minutes.
I mean, I think that she probably will because they've been working on it definitely in camp. I think she needs to be very careful and methodical when she does that. I think you need this fight. 8,200, 8,000. You talk about a 5-round title fight between Namajunas and Weili Zhang in the rematch. There's no way that I'll probably avoid this fight. Typically don't want to get to too much women's MMA, but I think there's tons of upside given the price. Weili Zhang has great volume, good aggressiveness. I think she's going to need to be a little bit more aggressive and assertive in this matchup. She needs to definitely push the pace a bit, test Namajunas' toughness, put her on the back foot, try not to get caught with counter shots, maybe mix in some takedowns to solidify rounds, but be very, very careful when you do that. Yes, you have a ton of MMA experience, but Namajunas, even going back to the Ultimate Fighter, you know, she really had that ace up her sleeve where she was able to just submit everybody, piece them up on the feet. And then if it hit the mat, she was slippery and slick and she was able to find submissions. So Namajunas at 8,200 is my play. I like her quite a bit, but there's no way I'm getting away from Weili Zhang. It's just a former champ who looked amazing at times, can definitely make adjustments. Let's not kind of underestimate adjustments that can be made from fight to fight. But I do think that Namajunas has her number in this matchup. I think striking wise, the fact that she did knock her out, I think is going to inspire more confidence in Namajunas. And as long as Namajunas is going out there and is assertive and is not shy, I think that we're going to have a dominant performance here. I think she's definitely going to win 3 rounds. I foresee it reaching the championship rounds, and I'm going to favor Namajunas in the matchup. She checks more boxes for me, but the value on Weili Zhang is incredible.
The thing that really has surprised me this week in relation to this fight has just been monitoring the betting lines on this one, and I've been pretty floored. I thought heading into this, Rose would be a -140, -150 favorite, but there are books out there. We're actually getting plus money on Rose Namajunas, and
Crazy.
I think Rose is I think she's just one of these fighters I think everyone just kind of counts out a lot against. Yeah. You know, look, I think she has a jiu-jitsu advantage in this one. I do like Rose, but I'm with you. I do think that is a fight that we do have to be looking at as a a priority of circling and say, hey, need someone have in that one. Mitch, a question says, can you stack both main events for only cash?
Both in the same lineup? I mean, I
wouldn't do both in the same line, but I think in cash, I don't mind stacking them in cash.
I don't either. And I'm not big into stacking, but the value on the underdog is just amazing. And the volume for each of the main event and co-main event should definitely, work out for you if you are stacking in cash. So yes, they're both viable. And you mentioned that Namajunas can be found as an underdog. She's a slight underdog. She's plus 100 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So yeah, I like that a lot, man. I really do. You're talking about Namajunas. I just think that she's going to go out there and replicate what happened, but it's going to be over the course of 5 rounds, not going to be a finish.
Yeah, at least for right now. It may change tomorrow. We can legally bet here in the state of Florida, the Hard Rock Sportsbook. And I was just looking at where Rose is at right now. She's plus 100. And I'll say this: if you think Rose is going to win, just go make your bet now. Because I don't think you're going to get a better number than that. I think it's probably going to be I would imagine it's going to be a -110 on each side by the time we get to fight night. But it's definitely something to look out for. Then, of course, rematches is something that Rose is very familiar with. Let's move. Next up, we've got Frankie Edgar taking on Marlon Vera, 7,400 Frankie Edgar, 8,800 for Marlon Vera. This is really, I think, what this fight comes down to, Pete, is can Marlon Vera keep it on the feet?
Yeah, it's a great point. And can he? I don't know. We'll have to see. But Frankie Edgar is definitely in the underdog pool. At 7,400, you talk about a very good wrestler who could work towards, solidifying some rounds with some takedowns, getting some top control, landing some punishing ground and pound. He actually has some good defensive submission skills. So he's able to avoid tricky situations. I think that, it's tough to get behind a fighter as they're aging in their career and they're also taking so much damage towards the tail end of their career, right? Like we just saw Frankie Edgar get knocked out in one of the most vicious fashions ever. How does he respond to that? Well, I think that Frankie Edgar just kind of straps up his boots, gets back to work, gets back to training, and you're going to see him work harder in the gym. But a guy like Marlon Vera can definitely test his chin throughout. I don't know, man. Like Marlon Vera seems to be very, very inconsistent. Obviously, he's won and lost, alternated wins and losses. I mean, Andre Ewell lost the fight to Song Yadong that many thought that he won. got that nice victory over Sean O'Malley. That was great. Then lost to Jose Aldo, and now is just coming off a victory over Grant, where he did use some takedowns. I don't think he's taking down Frankie Edgar. I think this is going to try to play out on the feet and just work in that vicious Muay Thai. I don't know if I really like the Marlon Vera call here at 8,800. I feel like he will walk away with the victory, but there are some better pieces on this card that I'd rather get to in this high 8 or 9,000 range.
True, false. Saturday night's the final fight in Frankie Edgar's career.
It's false.
I think it's true. I think it's his final fight. I think he goes out in New York.
No.
Win or lose. I think it's his last one.
I think he should. I mean, it seems like he should. And this is like a case of where you're so addicted to the sport and you know nothing else. And you're just in the game for a little bit too long. And now these younger guys that are sharper in all areas, they start to, he's always been a guy that's been the tough guy. So he's taken tons of damage throughout his career, and then he's able to deal with that adversity and come back. Well, guess what? As you get older, that becomes more and more difficult. And if he has to weather the storm from Marlon Vera, I think that his chances of coming back are very, very slim. So I am siding with Marlon Vera in the fight, but Frankie Edgar is an excellent value play.
I agree with exactly what you said there. I'm siding with Vera. I do like the value with Frank in particular, especially if he's able to go and take around that. It feels like old school matchmaking here, Pete, where it's about, we've got the older guy. You know what? There's not much left in the tank there. Yeah. He's 4 years old at 135 pounds. And this feels like this is Marlon Vera's chance to make himself a name over against a former champion.
I mean, you would think, right? Like, this is definitely, it's not a layup by any means, because it's Frankie Edgar, former champ, can test you in all areas. He's phenomenal. And Marlon Vera is traditionally a slow starter, as mentioned in chat. Yes, he is. So if Frankie Edgar gets out ahead, the volume and the pace is what wins a lot of judges over. But you're starting to see where, I don't know, it seems like this past couple months, if fighters get blanketed, but the other fighter is more damaging, or they're starting to value more damaging shots than volume. I'm just interested. I think it could be a sticky situation and end up going the distance, and we could be talking about a disputed decision.
Of course, I just heard from the boss man, Alex Baker. Ownership projections have been updated over at Awesemo.com. And if you're not an Awesemo Plus member and you want to become a member, you got to take advantage of the promo we got going on during today's show, as you got to use that promo code MMA Strategy Show. If you're a new user of Awesemo Plus Platinum, you get 25% off your first week. Once again, that's promo code MMA Strategy Show, one word, all caps, for 25% off your first week of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Of course, gives you access to all the great tools and content we have over Awesemo.com, whether it's ownership projections, player projections, so much more, a ton of great content over there. In terms of MMA, you get that top fighter tool as well, which is a massive tool you want to use. And of course, if you just want a Awesemo MMA weekly package, you can get that as low as $295 a week. Stop guessing, start winning. Join Awesemo Plus today. Let's move next over to a matchup that I'm really intrigued by. A guy from here, who now lives in my hometown of Tampa, Florida, originally from Buffalo, Billy Q, taking on Shane Burgos. 7,200 for Billy, 9,000 for Shane. Of course, I had Billy on my show this week. We actually recorded that conversation at the end of last week, and really my two big takeaways, Pete, from the conversation was the fact that he has been working with Antonio Tarver, the boxing world champion. And his main reason for working with Antonio, not just because he's a great boxer, but the fact of he feels this will be a boxing matchup against Shane Burgos. And then the other takeaway that I took was him talking about, first time fighting back in front of the fans, and how that is it's going to be a different environment for him. Yeah,
great points. I'm always interested whenever you have these little nuggets about the people you interview, and definitely working with Tarver is a great thing. Billy Q is a guy that we've relied on a lot to come through for us in underdog situations and situations where he can win the fight as the fight goes on. He tends to weather the storm a lot, tends to have to overcome a ton of adversity. He takes a lot of damage at times. He gets himself in some bad positions. Also, I am very intrigued with this matchup. I think it's going to be a very, very violent fight. And this violence could end up being fight of the night. It could be a phenomenal fight, but I don't know if it's going to result in the best DFS performance, because if it's a stand-up fight, do we really get the best score? I don't know. I'm going to lean in Shane Burgos' direction. I think at 9,000, he's fought the more legitimate competition. He's fought some staples within the division. You talk about Edson Barboza, Emmett, Amirkhani, Swanson, Holloway, Calvin Kattar, just to name a few, Charles Rosa. So like he's fought some really good guys. And that doesn't mean that Billy Q can't go in there and compete with him, because I do think that he can. We've started to see Billy Q turn into he's been a well-rounded fighter, but he's starting to be dangerous in all areas. And he's so game that if you don't put him away, he's going to keep, knocking on your door, trying to take you out. So this is an underdog with tons of upside at 7,200, but I am siding with Shane Burgos. I'm worried about the damage that he took in some of his knockout defeat to Edson Barboza. That was such a weird KO loss where it was a somewhat delayed response. But I don't really know if a guy in Billy Q, which is more volume, less power, can take advantage of that. So I'm going to side with Shane Burgos. I think that the striking's a little bit crisper. I think that he can match the volume, the aggressiveness. We've also seen Billy Q hurt numerous times.
Yeah.
And he's had to overcome a lot. But there could be a time where a guy that's in this, upper echelon of the division hurts you and then ends up taking you out. So I'm siding with Shane Burgos at 9,000.
That was part of our conversation as well of, being a little over aggressive in fights. I think the one thing is, if you're going to take Shane Burgos, look, when we get to our straight up picks, I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm picking Billy Q. I got to go with my Tampa guy.
And I'll be taking Iaquinta because he's my buddy. So that's how we go.
I mean, look, I think in terms of a DFS aspect, if you're looking at Shane Burgos at 9,000, I think ultimately the question has got to be I think for him to truly pay off that price, I think it's got to be a stoppage victory. I mean, yes, even a decision win, a high volume decision win, he may get in that close to 90 range, but at 9,000, man, I'm looking for 100 points. So that would be my only concern about Shane Burgos as a part of a GPP.
I would agree. And I do think that a guy like Shane Burgos can actually get some knockdowns, because we've seen Billy Q take a shot, get cracked on the regional scene, get knocked out from a head kick. So there's definitely a path. So I think that Shane Burgos, trying to, not predict the points, but predict the outcome, I'm going to side with him and think that some crazy stuff could possibly happen en route to a better score.
Yeah. Next up will be the opening matchup of the pay-per-view. And the reason it's the opening matchup is because of Trevor Whitman. So Trevor Whitman wasn't trying to corner back-to-back fights. That was a request that his team had made and make this one. So Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler will kick this one off. Gaethje 8,900, 7,300 for Michael Chandler. And I mean, this is a fight that I think that we have to prioritize in terms of GPPs. Look, there was a funny prop bet that I saw put out there of who's going to take the first step backwards. I think it's Michael Chandler. I mean, look, I think it's a fairly easy fight to break down. I think is how quick does Chandler try to make this a wrestling matchup? Try to see what improvements that Justin Gaethje has made since his last fight against Khabib. I mean, look, Khabib's a different grappler, but Khabib was really the first guy who really truly pushed the wrestling aspect. And to me, on the other side with Chandler will Chandler actually defend leg kicks? Because this just isn't talking about his short stint here in the UFC. Go back to his Bellator stint. This is a guy who did not check leg kicks at all. You can go through multiple fights in Bellator, just didn't do it. And that's my concern. That's why I like Justin Gaethje in this fight. I think the leg kicks will be ultimately the reason that he goes out there and gets a stoppage victory, I think, in the first or second round.
Yeah, I love your take on this. I might have 100% of this fight, to be honest. I don't see how the winner of this fight isn't a part of the optimal lineup. I think that if say each fighter are 40% owned, I think that's too low, to be honest. I think that somebody's getting finished and you want to be on the right side of this. So whether you want to take a 50-50 approach to it, or if you want to be a little bit more bullish towards one side, I'm leaning towards Justin Gaethje. I think that the striking can test Michael Chandler. We've seen Michael Chandler over the years from Bellator. Now, even in the UFC, you're starting to see these chin issues start to really surface. He's taken so much damage. I mean, the wars against Eddie Alvarez took, I don't know how much off of his career. And now if he gets hit with a clean shot, he gets dropped. And then after that, he's going to, work towards trying to come back. But in addition to that, if say he can take a shot from the outside, Justin Gaethje is one of the best leg kickers in the game. And against the guy who is notorious for getting cracked in the leg and had some situations in Bellator where his leg gave out underneath him because of that awesome leg kick that his opponent landed. I am siding with Justin Gaethje, especially the UFC factor where he's fought legitimate UFC competition. Chandler has fought, I would say, slightly lower competition, but still like really high competition. It's just a different caliber when you're talking UFC against Bellator for the most part. Chandler can and should test the grappling of Justin Gaethje. That is the safest game plan out there, is go out there, pin Gaethje against the cage, try to wrestle early, wrestle often, test Gaethje's defensive, flaws and see if he made any adjustments in that area. If he does that, he could win a safe decision. So I'm going to be split on this pick, but I think that Justin Gaethje is going to basically defend some takedowns and keep it on the feet en route to a finish. So 8,900, I like Justin Gaethje a lot, but I will be prioritizing this fight. I cannot, say that enough. Chandler will be one of my highest owned underdogs, given the nature of this fight. It's going to be the most violent fight on the entire card.
And of course, in Chandler's last fight, we saw some poor fight IQ of why are you following Charles Oliveira to the ground, True. And then which makes me wonder is, the Stanford team could have the correct game plan out there of, hey, we got to try to take this one to the ground. Let's not get into a firefight, but ultimately 3 letters get in the way. It becomes a firefight. And when we're talking about 3 letters, EGO.
Well, yeah, I mean,
look, we can name how many fighters that we've known that it happens. They just don't follow the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, it does happen. And I love Michael Chandler. Like, I am a big Michael Chandler guy. I think that he has excellent boxing. I think that that entire camp at Sanford MMA is going to have him prepared in all areas of the fight. I mean, the wrestling in that room is the best. I don't think that Justin Gaethje's wrestling in the room, yes, he's with Kamaru Usman, but I don't think that it's the same as dealing with tons of different looks in the Sanford MMA wrestling room. Chandler needs to wrestle early, because if he stands with Justin Gaethje, I think he's getting knocked out.
Next up, when we're talking about a clear A side and B side of the fight, to me, this is one of them. Alex Pereira and Andreas Michailidis. Pereira, 9,100, 7,100 for Andreas. Pete, I mean, look, to me, this is a clear setup fight for Alex to go out there and win it. And I know you're in love with him here. I mean, look, if someone was going to take on Alex, the game plan truly would be don't have a kickboxing matchup. This guy's an elite kickboxer. Yeah. You would take a ground. That's not Andreas. Andreas is going to stand with him. To me, this is a classic UFC showcase fight, and Alex is a guy that I think we got to prioritize.
Yeah, Alex Pereira might be my favorite play on the entire slate. Now, you always have to pause and be careful when somebody's making their UFC debut, because you don't know how they're going to deal with the nerves, and octagon jitters, all that stuff. But I think a guy of Pereira's caliber, training with Glover Teixeira, being a phenomenal world-renowned kickboxing champ, having wins over Israel Adesanya at 9,100, you're giving him MMA gloves now. It's if you haven't seen his early MMA career, or if you haven't even seen his kickboxing career, the guy has some of the best striking you will ever see. And against Andreas Michailidis, a guy that really just, I don't know, man. His fight against Modestas Bukauskas, that fight was extremely weird. Got a victory over KB Buller, one of the lowest, I would say, skilled fighters in the UFC of late. I think that
he's not in the UFC anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think
as I recall, KB had a highly illegal knee about a week ago over in somewhere in Europe.
Oh, news to me. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, with all that being said, Alex Pereira is my favorite play on the slate. I think he's going to get that Francis Ngannou bonus. And if he doesn't, I think that we are going to get a round 1 or I say round 1 KO. I don't even see this going into round 2. He's just that special. So whatever the ownership is, I don't think it's going to be enough. I'll probably have 100% of them. And I know that's extremely aggressive. And if you're a contrarian and you think that the octagon jitters are going to get to him, you either fade the fight. I wouldn't recommend playing the opponent, because I think that Pereira is going to be dominant.
Yeah, KB Buller lost last week via first-round legal knee at UA Warriors 24. As I recall, I think I want to say MMA Fighting may have had the video of that highly illegal knee he landed. Highly illegal.
Not what you want to be known for. So yeah, that's unfortunate. Hopefully the opponent's okay, and hopefully KB stops doing that.
Next up, we got a matchup. It should be a striker's delight here. Maybe potentially one side, maybe another side might go a takedown route. Iaquinta versus Bobby Green. Iaquinta 7,600. Bobby Green 8,600. I mean, look, you talk about game plan. You know, if I'm that Longo Sarah fight team, I'm telling Al, let's try it. Let's test the wrestling of Bobby Green.
I mean, you would think, right? But like Bobby Green has some pretty good defensive wrestling and some offensive wrestling, himself. So I think that this will end up being a striking affair. The wrestling will somewhat nullify each other. Iaquinta has been away from the cage for a while. A friend of mine, I'm going to be rooting like crazy for Iaquinta. I think that this is a very winnable fight for him because Bobby Green is notorious for dropping decisions. He plays around in the octagon. He can have competitive moments. He should be winning the fight. And then for whatever reason, he allows his opponents to come back in. So you talk about Iaquinta as an underdog, definitely viable, part of my, underdog pool, but you have to take the inactivity into consideration. And in addition to that, you also have to take into the strength of schedule that Bobby Green's been facing. I mean, arguable, losses against Thiago Moises and Rafael Fiziev. I thought in the Fiziev fight, he looked damn good. A lot of people, cried robbery in that fight. And I just don't know if we need this fight. I really don't. It's not a fight that I'm prioritizing because I don't really see either guy landing a ton of takedowns. And that's kind of what boosts the total of Bobby Green's fights. If you look at it in the Rafael Fiziev, he threw 143 significant strikes. That is a ton. He only scored 57, but that was in a loss. So in a win, let's say he got the win there, he would have scored 87, priced at 8,600. I think that as long as he scores an under 95 or either one of these guys score under 95, they're not going to be a part of the optimal lineup. So I'm okay with getting away from this one. Bobby Green, by all accounts, should win because he's been the more active and facing tougher competition against a guy who has been inactive. But I'll look elsewhere for my lineups.
I prefer this fight in cash, but
yeah,
you know what Saturday's date is, right?
What is it? November
6th, which will mark exactly 8 years since Bobby Green won a fight via stoppage.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he's stopping my boy Al. Al's tough. Al is crazy. He took Khabib on a week's notice, a couple days notice. Like, come on. I don't think that Bobby. I mean, he could, but MMA math doesn't make sense, and you can't do it. So, I will look elsewhere for my lineups. I don't really see this fight being a part of the optimal.
November 6, 2013, a TKO win for Bobby Green against James Krause.
Damn, that's crazy. My boy, James Krause, our boy, we should say.
Who will be in Dublin. He is in Dublin. He will be the chief corner for James Gallagher on Friday night for the co-main event where Patchy Mix missed weight earlier today. And as
I look good.
I'm just going to say this stylistically, that is a god awful fight for James Gallagher. I'm interested to see what James Krause has done with his striking game.
Mm-hmm.
Both are good grapplers. James got to win the fight on the feet. But as I said on Twitter yesterday, there is a reason Patchy Mix is a 3-1 betting favorite in that one.
It's interesting. And he's coming in heavy, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. I guess apparently he's had to deal with some adversity because of some of his chief corners, I guess.
Again, yeah, they didn't follow COVID protocol or the COVID stuff. So I don't know.
I think it sounds like they're maybe not vaccinated. And
that's what I heard too.
The country would not let him in.
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. You're gonna just abandon your guy like that. You don't think whatever. Don't get me started with that because I'll start freaking out. I mean, like the fighter's their priority. You need to do everything. If you're gonna agree to corner and coach somebody, you need to make sure that nothing of your own personal decisions is going to get in the way of that. That is so ridiculous. Have somebody else there to corner him.
And from a UFC aspect is the fact of starting on Monday to get into the United States, you have to show proof of vaccination. The UFC sent a letter out to all of their fighters about a month ago, warning them of this, of saying, look, we're not telling you have to be vaccinated. It's totally your choice. But if you're not vaccinated, you got to let us know because then we can't book you for a fight in the United States.
Well, yeah, because you don't want to have this issue surface the week of the fight. You come in there with the Aaron Rodgers treatment. You know what I mean? Like whatever this homeopathic stuff instead of the COVID vaccine, whatever it is. But like if the organization is telling you the prerequisites of what you need to have, just like your all medicals, you need to have that checklist secured. So that's simple as that.
Yeah, it's one of the things to put in there. Of course, this is the also MMA strategy shows. We're getting you ready for UFC 268, and we are brought to you by Monkey Knife Fight. They got their player props contest with Monkey Knife Fight. You are in charge. All you got to do is go to monkeyknifefight.com. When you sign up, be sure to use that promo code Awesemo for instant first match deposit of up to $100. Pete, let's look at the main event and co-main event. We got, of course, we always like to look at strikes landed. Huge number on Kamaru Usman, 168.5.
Jeez.
It's a massive number.
That's a big number. Well, let's think. And the Colby Covington fight landed 175 first time around. I will say more. And I didn't think I would say that, but yes, more.
I look, I think if you believe this fight's going 25 minutes, you have to go more. If you think Kamaru Usman is going to get him out before the 5th round, I think it goes less. I kind of feel like Monkey Knife Fight's trying to get you to take the less on here one. Colby Covington, I think, is a really interesting number, 114.5. I think that's a more for me.
Yeah, I mean,
I just think the number's too low.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, the Usman fight, he landed 143.
He's a volume guy.
It's too low, man. It's too low. I foresee this reaching the championship rounds. I could be shocked, and Kamaru Usman gets him out of there, but it's a double more for me.
And it's a double more for me in the co-main event with Namajunas and Weili. Namajunas 117.5, Weili 99.5. I think this thing's going 25 minutes. So that is a double more situation for me.
Weili only landed 12 last time because it
okay, 78 seconds. This thing's going 25 minutes or Hawes. At least in my opinion.
Well, I mean, imagine if she goes out there and she puts her away in 30 seconds. I think it's going to go the distance as well. I think it's going to be somewhat of a war, pretty reminiscent of the Ioane and Jacek fight, leaning in the Rose Namajunas direction. So I'll say more as well for both.
Total strikes that Weili had against Ioane and Jacek, 170.
Yeah, I think it's a double more.
Yeah, I mean, look, now if you think the fight's going to get done in 3 rounds, I think then it's a double less situation for me. I think this fight's going 25 minutes. It's a double more situation for me. Of course, appreciate Monkey Knife Fight, their support of the Also MMA Strategy Show. Once again, be sure to use that promo code Awesemo when you sign up for an instant first match deposit of up to $100. Next up, we got a matchup of a guy who's finally making his UFC debut. It's been a long time coming. I remember when I talked to him about 2-3 months ago, his message was, I'm going to keep knocking off all these young prospects until Dana White gives me the call. He gets the call in short notice. Doesn't happen on that week, but now he gets Phil Hawes. Phil Hawes, 9,400 and 6,800 for Chris Curtis, man. Chris Curtis is a guy that's in my underdog pool. It's a style clash here because Phil Hawes, who's a guy who starts fast. Chris Curtis, a guy who starts slow, but then it turns around where Phil Hawes fades and Chris Curtis comes on the 2nd and 3rd round. I mean, look, if you tell me if you tell me Phil Hawes gets Chris Curtis out in the 1st round, okay, I can see it happening, but this is, to me, he's got live betting situation written all over it, Pete. If this thing hits the 2nd round, you might be just sitting on that app and just seeing what's the best number you can get on Chris Curtis.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you, Chris Curtis is a guy that I've paid attention to a lot. He was the former CES champ, and that's an organization I fought for. So, when he's headlining the card or whatnot, you're always kind of, tuning in to watch him and his skill level. I knew it from the beginning. I was like, this guy's skill level striking is exceptional. And I think that he's going to make some waves in a bigger promotion like Bellator or the UFC. And I'm happy that things have all gone the way that they have, where he took the short notice opportunity against Phil Hawes. That ended up falling through. And I think that could be a blessing in disguise, because when you're taking a short notice fight, you're brought in and you're taking it just for the opportunity. If you get the win, obviously that's the bonus, where you're like, oh my goodness, I took it on 2 days notice and I came in here and I ended up getting a victory over a guy who had a full camp. But now that I think that he has a full camp where he can tailor the training around what Phil Hawes is going to bring to him, I think you're going to see Chris Curtis, come through in this underdog spot. He has, exceptional power in his hands, but more than that, he's able to deal with adversity well, and he has the better cardio of the two. Phil Hawes' cardio drops off a cliff, and I'm a Phil Hawes guy. I hate for these guys, one of these guys to lose. I don't want these guys to fight each other, but I think that Phil Hawes is, a very, very dangerous opponent because he has excellent power, good striking, phenomenal wrestling. Round 2, round 3, he looks like a shell of himself where he's not the most most dangerous guy. He looks human. He doesn't look superhuman. And I think when he looks human in rounds 2 and 3, you're going to see the underdog at 6,800, Chris Curtis, come from behind and end up, chin checking Phil Hawes, possibly getting him out of there. So yeah, I'm leaning in Chris Curtis, and I was very, very surprised at the crazy line of 9,400 for Phil Hawes, but I'm going to let other people, take that shot. A round 1 victory is definitely possible. So I'll have some ownership there, but Chris Curtis, 6,800, best value play on the slate, I think.
Craziest story with Chris Curtis. Got to go back to 2019, loses to Magomed Karamov in the PFL. Yeah. He's done. He's like, I'm going to retire back. PFL officials come to him and go, hey, Karamov just told us he can't compete the rest of the night. You want to in the final? And he goes in and fights Frank Cooper a third. The guy was literally done. He's like, well, I guess I'm still fighting.
Yeah, right. Can you imagine? Goodness, man. I love Chris Curtis. I think that he has a clear path to victory here is test Phil Hawes in rounds 2 and 3. Weather the storm early, be defensively sound, and then really push the pedal to the metal rounds 2 and 3 and try to break Phil Hawes. So yeah, that's my call for the week. I really like him. I've been following him ever since CES. So 6,800 is a definite bargain.
He's fought everywhere.
Yeah, I know, but that's how
everywhere.
He has, but that's how I know him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I know him from watching on the same card. You know what I mean? It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Next up, we got Edmund Shahbazyan, 7,700, taking on Nasruddin Imavov, 8,500. Edmund Shahbazyan is a guy he was the hot guy not that long ago. So he suffered a back-to-back losses here. It's an interesting matchup taking on Imavov. Even though Imavov is from Dagestan, he's not that wrestler. He's more of a striker.
Yeah. I mean, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Shahbazyan is a guy that we thought was going to possibly contend for the title one day. And he's getting everybody out of there in round 1. And when you have early finishers, it's a double-edged sword, right? They look fantastic, but at the same time, they're relatively untested and green in certain areas. Not always the case, but definitely was the case for Edmund Shahbazyan. And you saw that, pretty clearly in the Derek Brunson fight where he was just taken down repeatedly, hit with vicious ground and pound. The fight should have been stopped several times, in my opinion. And then coming back to face another grappler. I remember we said, this makes no sense. You're facing another grappler after just getting dominated from another grappler, from a wrestler in Jack Hermanson. So now he's in a striking matchup against Nasruddin Imavov. And I think you could see his striking potential kind of come through in this matchup. But is Shahbazyan a stud or a dud? I don't know. I'm really, really torn with this matchup. I feel like I want to lean towards Nasruddin Imavov. He's shown me more over the course of 15 minutes. And, the second round victory over Ian Heinisch really holds a lot of value for me. I think that Heinisch is dangerous in all areas. Probably not a fight I'm prioritizing. I know it's going to be a striking matchup, but I feel like they're both pretty defensively sound striking wise. Neither one of them can really go to the takedown well. We could get some knockdowns that could end up boosting the total, but it's probably a fight that I will be slightly underweight to the field, but I'll be siding with Imavov slightly.
The fighter on this card that may, for some people, be going under the radar, he's not going under the radar for me, and I think it's the guy that we got to prioritize this week, is Ian Garry, the Cage Warriors welterweight champion, making his UFC debut. This was the guy that had made it well known. He was not interested in going to Bellator. His mindset was, I want to be in the UFC. He's taking on Jordan Williams here. He's 9,500. It's a big price tag. 6,700 for Jordan Williams. Jordan Williams, look, he does have power in his hands, no question about it. But man, Ian Garry, I think when you talk about fighters that are coming into the UFC as prospects that you go, man, the ceiling is super high on this guy. It's Ian Garry. I really like him in the spot. We got to pay up for him this week. But if you want to put a Chris Curtis in your lineup, you want to put a Billy Quarantillo in your lineup, you want to put a Frankie Edgar in your lineup, putting Ian Garry in your lineup makes the path to that is much easier.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a dominant performance here from Ian Garry. Obviously, an international guy coming over here, debuting in the UFC, Octagon Jitters. We spoke of that before. Don't know how he's really going to handle his, UFC debut, but Ian Garry is one of the, highest touted prospects in the game. And I think that he's very, very well-rounded, has good wrestling, good striking. I think that he might be one of the best prospects in the game. And I think the UFC knows what they're doing here. 9,500, that salary is reminiscent of Khamzat Chimaev, Mason Jones. You're paying up for it, but you know what you're going to get, or at least you know what you should get. And I'm okay with paying that 9,500. I think the salary is going to be, there's going to be so much salary left on the table, or there's going to be so much salary to spend because I'm going to a guy in Curtis as my underdog for some of my lineups. So Ian Garry, 9,500. I'm not going to overthink it. A guy facing Jordan Williams, who got taken down by Mickey Gall and submitted relatively quickly. That does not really bode well for a guy who trains at Sanford MMA, one of the best international prospects. So don't overthink it. I think Ian Garry, 9,500, one of the best pieces of chalk to target for your lineups this week.
Of course, one of the things that Pete and I love to see after the fights are over are those screenshots. And if you want to get into the Awesemo Hall of Fame, first off, you got to be rocking that Awesemo avatar. Your DFS profile, you can get that over awesemo.com/avatar. All you do is place in the top 3 of contests with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet your wins to @Awesemo HOF. You win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Only one free month can be awarded to a user per calendar year. First off, kudos to that stunner. He took down 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 5th in the big contest over there on FanDuel, winning, let's see, that'd be 115, 125, and $133,000. That's pretty good. That's a pretty darn good night, man. That's a pretty darn good night, Pete.
Oh my goodness. Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, also Locks262 taking down first place, win $30K over there on FanDuel. Rubric taking down 3rd in a NBA contest, win $20K. Also Velo taking down a contest where he won $1,500 there. Also Zach taking down 2nd place in a contest over there as well. And Tommy Nation taking down a NHL contest, taking down $20K. Of course, the NHL strategy show is coming up after us. You got to check out those guys to get you ready for tonight's NHL slate, as those guys do a great job of breaking it down for you. We still got a couple more fights here left to break down. We've got the retirement fight of John Villante taking on Chris Barnett, 8,300 for Chris Barnett, 7,900 for John Villante. I can see you shaking your head over there.
Bad, bro.
Who do you trust more? I don't trust either one of these guys. I guess you would say if it's John Villante's retirement fight, I guess he's just going to throw everything to the wind.
No. You trust John Villante? I did not say I trust John Villante. I'm just saying it is a retirement fight, so maybe he's just gonna say screw it. I'm going for the 50K. 1 foot in, 1 foot out, 1 foot in, looking in the rear view, thinking, I don't know, man. I think that a guy in Barnett who took a fight on short notice against one of the not most dangerous, but one of the most difficult fighters in the heavyweight division, and Ben Rothwell, very, very tricky fighter to deal with on short notice. Didn't really look the best, but at 8,300, you are talking about heavyweight MMA, extremely volatile normally. John Villante has lost all of my trust, and he has lost to Sam Alvey, Herman.
When did he have your trust?
No, he has some notable wins if you go back some time. So it's like you're constantly like sitting there like, is he going to turn it around? Is he going to showcase some skills?
Yeah, when he was like 40 pounds less.
Yeah, but it's not only that, right? Like, it's not the weight that's really his issue. I think it's just like his commitment to the sport, or at least it seems that way, where he doesn't come in the best shape. He thinks he's just going to go out there, like rock'em sock'em robots and just hang it out there and go for a paycheck. I think a guy in Barnett's going to look to rebound off of his UFC debut defeat. I think that he could run into a power shot from John Villante and get knocked out. So with all this being said, be very careful with this matchup. It is heavyweight MMA, and if you want to blindly play it, you can definitely get exposure to John Villante. I ain't doing it. I am not doing it. I'm going to target Chris Barnett. Not one of my boldest plays, but I'm going to target Barnett and probably be even with the field. I won't be overexposed to this fight because it just screams ugly.
I may have a sprinkle of this fight. You know, it's like when you're doing that recipe card, ask for a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
I might have a pinch of this fight.
Yeah, well, a pinch to you or a pinch to somebody else is different. So you're like everybody, like if you talk about grandma's recipe, it's different. So for me, I will be.
My pinch is like a real pinch. It's not that, hey, let me throw half the salt bottle in there.
Well, that's how some people are. So I will not be aggressive with this fight. With that being said, Barnett is a guy I will be looking to, but I hate this fight.
So are you trying to tell me Mama Pete throws half the salt in the pot?
No, that's like spices and this and that. Like, you know how it is. It's the secret recipe.
Yeah, no, I'm truly a pinch. But the next up, we got a matchup that came together this week. Jacoby stepping up on short notice, taking on John Allan here, man. Huge price tag on Jacoby at 9,600, 7,800 here for John Allan. I don't, man. Dustin's my guy. Man, it's a huge price tag when we're talking about DFS.
I love Dustin Jacoby. I think that he's one of my most interesting fighters to follow because of his striking prowess from Glory coming over here to MMA. Looks so refined, looks so special. Taking a fight on short notice. Okay, that's not really much to kind of worry about. I mean, it depends on how hard he was training or does he train all the time, blah, blah, blah. But now you're talking about pairing a price tag with him, 9,600, more than Ian Garry, more than Pereira. Get out of here. It's an easy fade for me. And John Allan's not bad. John Allan's not a bad fighter at all. He's a good striker, has been in some highly competitive fights. The Dolidze fight was pretty close, a lot closer than what the stats show. But 9,600, it's a full fade for me. I'm getting away from it. I'd rather pay down, get some other fighters. Jacoby is the pick. I'm still picking him to win, but it's more of the salary play because in his victories, right? Mm-hmm. Let's look at this. Got a first round victory over Stewart. That was great. Scored 106. Okay. First round victory over Justin Ledette. Scored 119. This is probably going to go the distance and he'll probably be around 80, 85. Not worth this 9,600 at all. So I'm fading him this week and I will get exposure to John Allan just because it's pretty easy to cross one person off when they're that highly priced.
Yeah. I mean, look, obviously it could be, depending on what ownership ends up being, but I'd rather spend $600 less and get to a Shane Burgos fight that may ultimately go distance as well, but I just think because of volume
Correct.
There. Next up, we have got Bruno Souza taking on Baghdasaryan. Baghdasaryan 9,200, 7,000 here for Souza. Souza, a prodigy of Lyoto Machida.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Souza is a talented karate specialist. I watched some fights of his and he uses some excellent footwork, which can frustrate a lot of strikers. And he likes to counterfight a lot where he fades back, pulls back, hits a lot of people with counter right hands or counter hooks. And I thought that was nice. Keeps his hands pretty low. But where, this could end up getting ugly for him is if Baghdasaryan is able to close that gap and really force the firefight and, engage in the clinch where Baghdasaryan is going to be leaps and bounds ahead of him in this spot of the fight. If he's able to create like a phone booth fight, I think Baghdasaryan's going to get him out of there with some vicious Muay Thai, some good knees, some good elbows. Even on the outside, Baghdasaryan's striking is just phenomenal. You saw him in his previous fight against Colin Anglin, where he is able to scramble back to his feet, got a knockdown, showed off some impressive, striking variety. So it's Baghdasaryan for me, despite Bruno Souza's karate accolades. I think Baghdasaryan's a great play at 9,200. A Souza dancing around on the outside, possibly catching Baghdasaryan when he's over aggressive en route to a decision is possible. But I think Baghdasaryan is definitely the play at 9,200.
Final fight, the opening fight of the night, CJ Vergara taking on Ode Osbourne. We'll break down this fight with this question that we got from Sam Castle Dance. Any concern about Ode Osbourne coming off a knockout loss less than 2 months ago?
Less than 2 months ago. I mean, it's 3 months ago because it's about 3 months ago because it was in August. It's about to be November. Yeah, I mean, not really. I mean, yes, I'd like fighters to sit out like 6 months. Not all knockouts are created equal. That was a bad one, and he ended up getting caught pretty viciously. But up until that point, he was extremely competitive. He's going up against CJ Vergara. and he has some skills in the striking department. I think that the long Ode Osbourne can pose problems for a lot of people in this division, and he's fought legitimate competition. I mean, losing to Brian Kelleher on your debut, okay. Knocking out Jerome Rivera in very, very quick fashion, that was spectacular. And now losing to Manel Kopp. Manel Kopp was one of the best prospects outside the UFC, and everybody was down on him last fight, and I did not understand it at all, and I was on the Manel Kopp side, thankfully. Losing to him is nothing to hang your head at. So it's Ode Osbourne for me at 8,700, but Vergara can definitely test him in all areas of the game. This could end up being a war, but I just question Vergara's, not strength of schedule, because he's fought some good guys, but it's just not, the UFC caliber that Ode Osbourne has faced 3 times this far. So Ode Osbourne is my lean.
Let's give our straight up fight picks for this one. I'll go down mine. I'll let you go with yours. Give me Usman, give me Rose, give me Chito Vera. I'll go with gotta go with the Hardy. I'll go with Billy Q. Gaethje, Pereira. I will go Green. Give me Chris Curtis in the upset. I think he weathers an early storm there. I'll take Shahbazyan upset as well. Ian Garry. Oh man, God, John Villante.
Oh my God,
Jacoby, Baghdasaryan, and give me Ode.
Give yourself like 50 push-ups for picking Jean Villante. All right, we're going Kamaru Usman, Rose Namajunas. Non-DFS, I'm picking Frankie Edgar just because he's my buddy. I don't think he wins though. Shane Burgos, Justin Gaethje, Alex Pereira, Iaquinta because he's my friend. Chris Curtis, Nasruddin Imavov, Ian Garry, Chris Barnett, Dustin Jacoby, Melsik Baghdasaryan, and Ode Osbourne. It's going to be a good card, Jason.
Get some rapid fire questions because the NHL show's coming up next. Fights to fade, get minimal exposure to for me, Villante Barnett.
Yeah, Villante Barnett. And then the Bobby Green Iaquinta is one I'm okay with getting away from.
Sammy, appreciate you in the super chat. He sets us over at 9.5. He's getting better.
Yeah, no, it's under.
Yeah, I would say under. In terms of top 2 cash GPP underdogs, I've kind of labeled the underdogs already. MVP, I think you got to look at Usman. It's going to be a popular one. I think also you got to look at Gaethje, Alex Pereira. I think it's got to be one to look in there too. Top 2 cash, I will say Usman, Gaethje for me.
Yeah, so to answer both of those questions, it's Usman, Pereira, and it's Ian Garry. So those 3 can be used for both of those questions.
And of course, we'll be here on Saturday for Live Before Lock, 5 p.m. Eastern time to get you ready for UFC 268. Coming up next is the AHL Strategy Show. Appreciate everyone tuning in to the Strategy Show. We will talk to you on Saturday for Live Before Lock. Have a good day, everybody.